Well, good afternoon all, and welcome to the Vale of Glamorgan Cabinet meeting today, the 27th of April 2023. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. Just a few of the usual housekeeping notes. Firstly, if I could remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and that this recording will be archived for future viewing. All participants should mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback. And if anyone wishes to speak, any participant wishes to speak, then they should raise their hand either on screen, if you are on screen at the moment, or using the digital function. We're only going to use the chat function to highlight any technical issues and or attract the attention of the chair or the Democratic Services Officer. So that's our usual preamble. We have 9 items before us today, covering a range of different areas, some housekeeping, some more important items. So without further ado, we'll move on to those. First of all, need to take apologies for absence. I do have an apology from Councillor Margaret Wilkinson, and I can see that everybody else is here in full happy glory. So agenda item 2 is minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of April 2023, and if I can take those as a true record of the meeting.
And I'll second those, Leader.
Thank you, and everyone's in agreement. Super. Then to receive declarations of interest, and if so, what the nature of those are. We don't have any declarations of interest today, so that's good. And then moving on to the annual delivery plan monitoring report, and that's actually for quarter 3 in 2022-23, and progress against the external regulatory recommendations and proposals for improvement. In terms of the monitoring, we've had consultation across the organisation, in effect, with directors and the strategic leadership team. And the performance report actually applies to the whole authority. All members via scrutiny committees and cabinet have received quarterly performance monitoring reports, which incorporates progress against key regulatory actions. And I think it's good to see that all 4 corporate plan wellbeing objectives were attributed a green performance status at quarter 3 to reflect the good progress that's being made to date. So 93%, and that's 353 out of 380 planned activities that were outlined in the annual delivery plan have been given a green performance rating. About 2% were attributed amber and 5% were attributed red, which is an excellent situation at this stage. Obviously, there will be a full year review at the end of it. All 5 scrutiny committees have reviewed the quarter 3 performance report, and their views are mentioned in paragraph 2.26, in which they're saying that all 5 scrutiny committees noted the quarter 3 performance results and the progress to date. There's also an overview of quarter 3, the progress in responding to our regulatory improvement areas. So those are the areas that regulatory bodies are particularly interested in how we're performing. And of the 24 actions relating to local regulatory recommendations, 17 of those are a green status, 4 amber, and the remaining 3 actions are red. and again, those are detailed in the report, and also the actions that are being taken against those. If you go on to Appendix A, then there is a very detailed review, both of the areas, the things. I just have to move my reports around the other way because these are now landscape. What we've achieved in the various areas, and there's a lot of information there. And also, as we would do, look at areas for future focus, the things that we want to either work harder on or to improve on, and those are there. I'll probably come to those. Appendix B looks at performance exceptions, and so that's where they aren't a green status, but it does say what the direction of travel is. Earlier feedback had said they want to know, not only where we are currently, but actually whether we're going forwards or backwards in terms of the performance on that. So you'll see if performance is improving, if it's staying the same, or if it's reducing, and they're all outlined at Appendix B as well. A couple of the things that we have achieved is one which is particularly close to my heart was the Delivering Social Value Award at the Ystadau Cymru Awards, and that was for the work in partnering with the community of Ogmore by Sea to create a really, not only a modern community facility, an absolutely gorgeous community facility, which is well worth a visit if you haven't been. And that actually demonstrated. I mean, it did take ages to stitch everything together, but I know that the local community, along with our officers, have stitched together not only funding packages but dealing with contractors, using councils' expertise in terms of all the development costs, and it's a really super facility. But similarly, to look at things like focused improvement. One, which is not resting on our laurels, it talks about progressing the LED streetlight conversion programme. Well, to be fair, we are pretty well ahead of the game in terms of LED, but I think, and Mark will be able to tell me more about this, is that we're now into the type of streetlights that are quite specialist. And so, rather than actually ignore those, we are still moving forward. We know that there are still, a small percentage of lights that do need to be still converted in terms of achieving Project Zero. I can see on that Mark's hand has gone up, so I'm sure he probably wants to correct me. But there we are. Over to you, Mark.
No, far from it, Leader. I was just going to make the point about the LED streetlights. It's been really successful, and we got in Penarth, and I'm sure some few other areas, we've got some many Victorian streetlights that look as though they're from the Victorian era in terms of the way they're powered, but actually powered by LED lights. And and actually, when you look in the evening, they look absolutely fantastic. And there is sometimes a little giveaway, but if you see this little post by it where the supply is, but if you don't see the post, it looks as though they're actually the old gas lamps that we used to have a long time ago, and they're brilliant. But on a more serious note here, not that I'm not serious beforehand, was that if there's any outstanding that you do think needs replacing, you can email C1V at velglamorgan.gov.uk, because the contact centre do an excellent job, as we all know. And and by all means, if you want to copy one of us in, then please do so. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So, as I said, that report is before us, and the recommendations that we have today are that Cabinet considers the performance results and progress towards achieving the annual delivery plan 2022-23 commitments as aligned to our corporate plan wellbeing objectives. 2, that Cabinet considers the views and recommendations of scrutiny committees in relation to Q3 performance and approve identified remedial actions as the basis to address areas of underperformance and to tackle the key challenges identified, which are also in the report. 3, that Cabinet reviews the Council's progress to date in addressing existing recommendations and improvement proposals made by our external regulators, and we do that. And 4, that Cabinet approves the removal of completed actions from the Strategic Insight Board Insight Tracker, informed by the views and recommendations of scrutiny committees and the Governance and Audit Committee. Yes, because they said, well, if we've achieved something, why do we keep adding them into the report, which can make the whole report less clear. But anyway, on that note, I would move those recommendations.
And I'll second those, Leader.
Thank you. And yes, we have thumbs up as well. Agenda item 5 is one of our usual housekeeping reports, and that's the Chief Executive, or the use of the Chief Executive's emergency powers. And these are the things that we do basically when we're accepting grants, or we're agreeing a contract and we want to get the work going ahead, those sorts of things. And as I said, they are laid out. The ones that we have before us are laid out in section 2 of the report, and these are things like, well, you can imagine boiler replacement at one of our care homes. Well, if something like that happens, you would obviously want it to happen very, very quickly, that if it needs happening. Roof renewal at St Athan schools are quite often we do emergency powers to get that working. And also looking at how we make sure that our LGV drivers, who are predominantly working on our waste and recycling teams, are paid the correct market rate. Gwyn, you've got your hand up on this.
I just wanted to mention, Leader, that the Knapp skate park is due to be completed in July. Brilliant. So we look forward to that. It'll be really good.
It would be good if that's before school holidays, wouldn't it? That'd be really wonderful.
Exactly.
And I saw some. Did I see something really interesting about? Is it Hurt So Good? The sort of street art organisation are going to be working with young people to decorate walls there. So that should be really interesting as well. Look forward to seeing that. So yes, lots of things going on at the moment. The recommendation for us on this one is purely that the use of the Chief Executive's emergency powers be noted. And sorry, Mark, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just want to come in on the point in relation to page 4 on item E, and that's about the grass cutting services contract. This year in particular, we have got quite a number of cuts. I'm really pleased about that. But that's mostly because a lot of it's been financed by civil parking enforcement. So some people say, well, where does the enforcement money go? Well, that's an example where it goes. It goes to improve the quality of the Velcro Morgan area, and also good grass cutting. We make sure we only do it in areas where it's very much needed. Otherwise, we try to encourage biodiversity whenever possible. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna say that is that normally where it's sort of utility ground or some where people need to be able to get vision when they're coming out of junctions and that sort of thing. So Gwyn, did you want to come back in on something else, or was
no? I'm trying to get rid of the hand. I am really.
Super, that's all right. So we've noted that, and I think Bronwyn, you did second it, didn't you? Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
Mark's confusing me. That's going forward, and then on to agenda item 6. It's another sort of annual housekeeping report, and this is the Cabinet Annual Strategic Forward Work Programme, and that's from May 2023 right through to April 2024. So it's for the next full year, and the Cabinet quarterly work programmes, January to March 2023 and April to June 2023. So that's January to March, where we can check that we've done what we'd laid out to do, and April to June, so that lays out what we're going to do. And so, you know, when they're quite handy reports, because when people say to us, well, you know, what are you actually doing? You know, you can sort of say, well, in September, it's planned that we will be talking again about the collaborative working initiatives update that we do. We'll be bringing an update. Bronwyn, the deputy leader, will be bringing an update on Shared Prosperity Fund in terms of what's happening there and who we're working with on that. In September, there'll be a local development plan annual monitoring report. So Ruba will be bringing that, and one actually that I was looking at only earlier today, which I think is, I'll find it now, it's in there somewhere. An awful lot of people say, well, what happens to, you know, where can I find that information about section 106? And actually in here are details when the annual section 106 report will be coming, which then tells you exactly all where we've made agreements and where the money's being spent and where there is money that's available to be spent. And that's always a really interesting report. It also talks about when the budget reports will be coming through for next year and so on and so forth. So it might be that I'm strange, but I find that a very interesting report. As I said, you've then got the reports on the forward work programme that, oops, hang on, Appendix 2, that's the one where you can see all the various reports that we've already done. And that's quite handy, because I think it was pointed out to me that you can do a search on a subject on that, and you can find out when the reports came to Cabinet, and you can actually click on the link and get the reports. And then the final appendix is the one, and Appendix 3, which then looks at what we'll be doing from April to June this year. So very informative reports, but they are housekeeping in the main. So we just have 3 recommendations. Mark, is your hand still up, or are you? Do you want to?
Just going to say the point about, I know you partly made it for me, and in a sense the links, because I think the links are so useful for people, for members and the public to access those reports and find out what decisions we have made as Cabinet. But also, as you rightly said, it's also looking forward as well as looking back over last year. And as you know, we meet largely fortnightly, which is pretty good, to be honest, in comparison with lots of other councils. And that just shows you the volume of the work. And it's not just us that doing the volume of the work, it's our officers as well. So we got to appreciate the hard work of our officers supporting us as Cabinet members here as well, because without them, you know, we'd be pretty find it very difficult to do it, wouldn't we, to be quite honest with you?
We would indeed. So the recommendations on this are that Cabinet approves the annual strategic work programme, which is attached to Appendix 1 for the period May 2023 to April 2024, and that this is published on the Council's website. 2, that the updates to the Cabinet quarterly work programme for January to March 2023 attached to Appendix 2 be agreed. And then 3, that the Cabinet quarterly work programme April to June 2024 attached to Appendix 3 be endorsed. And I'd move.
And I'll second those as well.
Thank you. And everyone's in agreement. So moving on to agenda item 7, and these are reports of the Cabinet Member for Public Sector Housing and Tenant Engagement. In her absence, I will take these reports. This is the 2023 update to Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan for 2022 to 2025. And the Housing Support Grant is the policy and funding framework for delivering housing related support to vulnerable people in different ways. And so I think it's not well known that when we have vulnerable people in our communities, that as well as providing accommodation, we actually provide support to help them to remain in successful tenancies. And I think that, you know, when we have been dealing with homeless people, that we quite often have people working with them to help them to get back up on their feet. And so the HSG is an amalgamation of 3 existing grants: the Supporting People grant, a programme grant, the Homelessness Prevention grant, and the Rent Smart Wales enforcement grant. And everybody, you know, all local authorities are required to develop a 3-year local delivery plan, which we then have to submit to Welsh Government. And the budgets for the programmes delivered by the HSG, although they remain static for 2022 to 2025, from the 2021-22 allocation, I gave a combined total of just over 4.7 million each year. So the development and publication of the HSG delivery plan is actually a requirement of Welsh Government to comply with the guidance documents. At a local level, the programme, the HSG programme, has got a number of strategic aims for us, and that's reflecting community safety, health and social care, and well-being objectives. And so it aims to deliver high quality and strategically planned housing related support services. And as I said, that complements existing services and provides service users, so that's people that are in accommodation locally, with the best possible outcome. There are 3 appendices with this, and Appendix 1 is the 2023 update to the HSG delivery plan 2022 to 2025. So although it's a longer term document, there is an update to it. Appendix 2 is the local authority HSG spend plan for 2023 to 24, and Appendix 3 is the housing support grant delivery plan, which is the one that I just discussed, which was April 2022 to March 2025. And that is all laid out in terms of all the different things that we do. And so there's, you know, things such as emergency accommodation provision, daytime drop-in services, mediation services, so that we can help people to manage tenancies and work between them potentially and landlords, or them and maybe there's been resident disputes or something. Floating support for young people or ex-offenders or older people, or people who have substance abuse issues. A whole range of different support that is provided here. And I'm just looking at that, you know, people that have learning difficulties, or maybe have mental health challenges, etc. So we look to work with people to help them live successfully in the Vale. So as I said, this is then submitted to Welsh Government for their agreement, so that we can receive the funding for this. So just 2 recommendations here, and that's the 2023 update to Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan 2022 to 2025 be approved by Cabinet. That's the Appendix 1. That the Housing Support Grant Spend Plan 2023 to 2024 be approved by Cabinet for submission to Welsh Government. And so with just those 2 recommendations, I'd move.
And I'll second those.
Thank you. Everyone's happy on that. Agenda item 8. This is my last report for today, and actually probably the most challenging report. And this is the Vale of Glamorgan Rapid Rehousing Plan, and it's a complex report with a whole lot of variables, but in essence, this is seeking to deal with an issue that we've talked a lot about, right through the budget setting process and throughout the COVID pandemic, that there are huge challenges with the high numbers of homeless households, and an acute shortage of affordable housing solutions in the Vale. And as the report lays out, that has resulted in the need to use hotel accommodation on an emergency basis. Now, I was only discussing it earlier, is several years ago, it says several years ago, I think it was 11 years ago, because Bronwyn was the cabinet member for housing at the time, that the council stopped using hotels. We stopped using bed and breakfast accommodation. But the COVID pandemic, first and foremost, where people that had been sort of sofa surfing and living with friends and things suddenly needed accommodation, and the subsequent changes to homeless legislation resulted in a need to accommodate people who would not previously have been provided with temporary accommodation. So the situation currently is that there are 240 households living in temporary accommodation, and a third of which are hotels or bed and breakfast type provision. All we have seen a few sort of press articles or whatever talking about families living in hotel accommodation, but I think it's fair to say that nearly all the households living in hotels are single people or couples, and 70% of them are aged below 40. There are challenges as well. So what is coming before you today, Cabinet, is the draft rapid rehousing plan, and that's attached to Appendix 1. And it sets out how the use of hotels can be reduced over the next financial year. And it includes a number of key actions which are laid out here. And that includes things that we've already reported, which is increasing the number of homes available by building more social housing, increasing the number of council-owned temporary units, and securing greater access to private rental homes. And also there's the potential to remodel existing council homes, which means that a number of people can live there. But it also does look at whether or not social housing in the Vale is currently being allocated in the best way to achieve these sorts of outcomes. So this report comes before us today, and it is a complex and detailed report which goes through a number of various options, and so this report will be sent to scrutiny, to Homes and Safe Communities scrutiny, for consideration. I will certainly be at that scrutiny to participate in discussions, and I expect that other cabinet members whose portfolios relate to this will also be intending to be there if at all possible. So there are just 2 recommendations before us today, because ultimately, once it's been to scrutiny, it will come back to us again for further discussion. And that's that Cabinet approves in principle the rapid rehousing plan for the Vale of Glamorgan. And that secondly, that Cabinet refers the report to Homes and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee for consideration, and subject to any changes being received, agrees to admit the rapid rehousing plan to Welsh Government. So what that means is, if Homes and Safe Communities have absolutely nothing to say and just agree the report, then we wouldn't be bringing it back here to discuss again. However, if they do ask for changes or make any recommendations, it would come back to us for further discussion before we agree the final details of it. So, as I said, it's a complex report, a very complete report. Thank you to the officers involved in pulling this together, and hopefully, if we can move forward on this, we will be able to help people to have homes rather than just a room, and that would be really good, wouldn't it? So I would move.
And I'll second that, Leader. I would just like to add that, yeah, when I was cabinet member, obviously I was going back to 2012, and for 5 years there, is that we did, the officers and myself as the cabinet lead, then we did a huge amount of work about reducing and actually negating using bed and breakfast accommodation at that point, and we were able to successfully do that. But obviously, now the pandemic has thrown everything on its head. Also, the changes in the laws around housing and actually our responsibilities around that housing need. So, I think this is the right time now to bring forward this report. There's a lot of detail contained in the report, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I think it gives us a good starting platform to actually have that discussion. And I am looking forward to the Homes and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee, where I'm hoping that they will have a really good in-depth discussion around this with their views and thoughts, and to come back to us as well. So I do hope members of that committee take full part in that meeting. Thank you.
Super. Thank you. So that's everybody in agreement on that. So super. So moving forward to agenda item 9, and this is for the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services, and this is related to the Vale of Glamorgan Replacement Local Development Plan 2021 to 2036, issues, visions and objectives background paper. So yeah, it should be another complex and very detailed report. Over to you, Ruba.
I always have the very long titles, don't I? My report. So thank you, Liz. So this is, as you've just said, this is the Vale of Glamorgan Replacement Local Development Plan 2021 to 2036, and this is specifically the background paper on the issues, vision and objectives. So this paper identifies a series of issues relating to key economic, environmental, social and cultural challenges that are facing the Vale of Glamorgan, and which the RLDP will seek to address. So the planning policy team conducted a review of an extensive evidence base, which identified 9 themes under which those key issues have been grouped. And I think, Lead, if I can, it's worth just, I think I'm going to kind of read out to you those 9 themes, because I think hopefully people watching this now and later, and colleagues will see that it really is, it's covered a sort of a huge area of issues that we know are important, not only to the Vale of Glamorgan, but sort of globally. So those 9 themes are mitigating and adapting to climate change, improving mental and physical health and well-being, homes for all, placemaking, protecting and enhancing the natural environment, embracing culture and heritage, fostering diverse, vibrant and connected communities, promoting active and sustainable travel choices, and building a prosperous and green economy. And I think you'll agree that these are all encompassing themes. So the themes and these associated issues have then been used to inform and create the new vision and objectives. And there's a detailed background paper which you'll see that's attached to this at the appendix, Leader. So the vision really articulates the core purpose of the plan and translates how the RLDP will strive to address and support the challenges, opportunities, ambitions, really, for the authority across the new plan period. And the objectives offer greater detail on how the planning system can help achieve this vision and respond to the key issues that need to be addressed in the Vale. So I think that's really important for us to understand. In line with the community involvement scheme, which is outlined in the Council's RLDP delivery agreement, formulation of the vision and objectives also involved a series of engagement workshops with elected Vale of Glamorgan councillors, local community councils, members of the Vale of Glamorgan Public Service Board. And prior to the workshops, all invitees received a briefing note which included the draft vision and objectives, as well as a link to a survey offering respondents the chance to share their views on the various themes and issues identified. Comments from these surveys and workshops were reviewed and resulted in significant changes to the vision and objectives. So in total, 47 there were 47 comments. People commented on the draft vision and objectives, and comments were made on each element of the vision and all 10 objectives. I won't go through all of them, but again, I think it's really interesting to hear what some of those comments were. So if we just sort of take some of the categories, so for example, in climate change, there were comments that that our vision shouldn't be restricted to only new developments that mitigate climate change, but should also include refurbishments. That brownfield sites should be prioritised for new development, maintaining green wedges and retaining natural drainage for flood prevention, and that there should be investment in public transport and improve public transport links to reduce traffic congestion and air pollution related to climate change. And on mental and physical health and well-being, a question was asked: can the vision include reference of working in partnership to deliver aspirations? And interestingly, there was one on agriculture and how that affects nutrition, access to food and food pathways. And also the need to consider that older people can't always participate in active travel and may be more car reliant. So that's just and I've got many more examples, and those examples are also contained in the background paper. So this was a really thorough piece of work and a very responsive piece of work. So officers have really responded in detail and really well to lots of the comments. So the comments received, the Council's responses and the proposed changes are all set out, as I said, in Appendix 1 of this report, of the Cabinet report. But further details of the engagement that informed the issues, vision and objectives background paper will be included in our consultation report, which will come out will come in due course. And it's just worth mentioning that the integrated sustainability appraisal, the ISA, if you remember, Leader, which we discussed last year, is currently being completed in order to consider and communicate the likely effects of the emerging plan and, of course, the suggested alternatives. And it focuses on key sustainability issues and fulfills a number of the legislative requirements with the aim of mitigating negative impacts and maximising positive impacts of the plan making process. So, you know, I hope that sort of gives sort of a bit of background, but also, you know, shows you, you know, what that this report is very thorough. So I've got two recommendations, Liz, and the first is that Cabinet endorse the issues, vision and objectives background paper attached at Appendix 2 to the Cabinet report as part of the evidence base for the emerging replacement local development plan, and that secondly, that the head of sustainable development in consultation with the Cabinet member for community engagement, equalities and regulatory services, me, be authorised to agree the final format of any necessary minor typographical changes and minor amendments to the background paper as attached to Appendix 2 prior to its publication. So I so move. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Ruba. And yes, it's a comprehensive report and covered comprehensively. So thank you for that. I've got no doubt, no hesitation in seconding that. So are we all in agreement on that report? Excellent. So that's our last report for today. I don't have any urgent items. Neither do I have any part 2 items, either non-urgent or urgent. So on that note, I will draw the meeting to a close.